The only other thing I would want to do is Mr. Miracle, and the line went dead. He's like, what do you, like, who have you been talking to? I'm like, no one, what are you talking about? And he was like, that's literally who I'm calling to pitch you.
This book is just astounding on a number of levels.
Thank you.
But visually, what you've put together is this palette of amazing colors and these 9 panel pages that are just so full of detail. How much do you and Tom King go back and forth about these panels? Does he give you complete autonomy, or are there certain things that you guys go back and forth on?
Yeah, it's funny. Tom and I gel so well, and it sounds like marketing and hype, but like we really get each other. And people always talk about like how much back and forth. Like there's almost no back and forth. He gets me a script, and I think he knows exactly what I'm going to do with it, and I know exactly what I'm going to do with it, and I know exactly what he wants me to do with it. And also Tom's great because if something in the script doesn't work for me visually, he'll change it. He'll make it work. So yeah, it's like truly collaborative. At the same time, we have such a shorthand and know each other so well that like the collaboration is just the handing off of the script.
You know, he talks on Twitter a lot. This is the attention to detail put in the script. It's like, go crazy or something. Is that true, or does he put more detail?
No, it's absolutely true.
That's awesome, then. You must love that as an artist.
I do. It's Mr. Miracle especially. It's full script, so Tom gives me a stage direction and dialogue. I can't imagine working any other way because everything I draw is informed off what people are saying, what people are thinking. It's
the camera angles, the perspectives,
exactly.
and everything. For a lot of artists, the 9-panel grid is incredibly restrictive, especially in this day and age where the splash page is king, right? But you're able to deliver such different types of emotion from page to page. And I noticed something, that the eyes, Scott's eyes are key. How do you approach it when you get direction from Tom of, okay, he's really sad, we want to show that he's sad here. How do you change the eyes? Because that's where I noticed the difference.
Yeah, so the first part of the question, the 9-panel grid, it seems restricting. It seems most artists want 4 to 5 panels max, and they get very angry if there's more. But it's actually wonderfully freeing to have the 9-panel grid, because you no longer have to worry about the reader having to interpret anything. They know exactly how to read it, so you don't got to worry about that. So you get to play with time in a way that you can't do on a multi-paneled, multi-angled page. Mm-hmm. So I know I can control, just like a cartoon strip from, you know, like Calvin and Hobbes or Garfield or anything like that. I know I can do my setup in the middle and my punchline and move the reader that way, so I can deliver really strong emotional moments, I can deliver comedy, I can deliver all these things in that manner because I know how the reader's going to interpret it already.
Are the comedy bits hard?
Not so much. Like anything, if you have too much dour, too much dark, too much everything, like it becomes uninteresting. So Tom and I really like to throw in that dark humor when you probably shouldn't be laughing, but that's kind of our wheelhouse.
Obviously, Mr. Miracle is a Jack Kirby creation, one of his most unique creations, who was pretty much off to the side for a long time. And I would imagine partly is because a lot of people didn't really know how to do it without being called a Kirby clone or a Kirby ripoff. To me, the greatest tribute that you guys have pulled off for Kirby is that it doesn't remind you immediately of Kirby. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. We've said it a million times, is you can't out Kirby Kirby, and you can't even Kirby Kirby. So that's kind of, the fourth world has had a hard time sales-wise for a long time, because that's everyone's first instinct, is they love that Jack Kirby fourth world. I mean, every artist loves that fourth world era from Kirby, and they all want to return to that, and they all want to do that, and we knew you just can't. And so our way in to these big Kirby gods is Mr. Miracle, who is the only Kirby god who doesn't want to be a god. He just wants to be a regular person and live with his wife, Big Barda, and have a house and cats and all that. And so that's I always say that's, you know, the the X-wing flying down the Death Star alley, trying to shoot into that little thing there. That's your way into the giant, the gods of the fourth world.
Let's talk about artistic influences. Was Kirby a guy when you were a young comics fan? Was that somebody that caught your eye? Who were the artists that really interested you?
Actually, so like everyone my age, I'm 36 now. I had my period in the 90s where, you know, Jim Lee on X-Men and things like that. That was my jam.
Nice brownie points for the publisher.
Yeah. But when I was even younger, it's kind of funny because Mr. Miracle is a obscure character. We always say, odds are 95% of the people reading Mr. Miracle now found it through our book. Pretty unfamiliar with the character.
I bet you're right.
Yeah, but I have a history with the character. I have two brothers, both 14 and 15 years older than me, and I kind of idolized them growing up, and they were big comic book readers. And at a very young age, I remember my brother Greg passing me the Kirby Mr. Miracles, and I was entranced. I loved it. And funnily enough, as Mr. Miracle, the series with Tom and I, it came about in a weird way of kismet, where we were supposed to do The War of Jokes and Riddles together, the story that just came out with him and Mikkel. And DC loved it, and they greenlit it, and then someone else at DC read it and loved it too much and wanted it as part of the main Batman title. And they were like, that's great, but we can't fire Mikkel, so now Mitch is technically out of a job. But Dan DiDio,
Bad for Mitch.
Yeah, but Dan DiDio was like, you know, Tom, you and Mitch just pick something. We'll make it happen. And Tom's at his best when he's given something, or given options rather than picking something. And Tom called me up to give me the bad news, and I was crushed. I mean, I wanted to do my big Batman story. And he's like, is there anyone else? I mean, I have something to pitch you, but is there anything else you would want to do? Any character? And I was like, man, Batman's my be-all, end-all. The only other thing I would want to do is Mr. Miracle. And the line went dead. He's like, what do you, like, who have you been talking to? I'm like, no one, what are you talking about? And he was like, that's literally who I'm calling to pitch you, of all millions of DC characters or whatever. And so, yeah, it all just kind of, it's weird looking at things in your life and how they connect to where you are now. Yeah.
Speaking of connection, you and Tom are locked at the hip.
Yeah, he's the godfather of my child. Yeah.
First of all, that's awesome. But you guys have worked together on several books, and throughout comics history, there are these partnerships that have really resonated with folks. Obviously, you know, Lee and Kirby, but then you get to the 70s, you got, you know, Cockerman, Claremont, and Byrne, Wolfman and Perez. You guys are becoming that partnership for the modern era. Snyder and Capullo's another one. You guys are, it's like a tag team battle in the DC offices to see who's the greatest duo. But do you want to work with other writers, or is Tom the guy that you want to be linked with?
You know, I'm friends with a lot of writers, obviously, in this industry, and this is gonna make them heartbroken. But I will grab onto Tom's leg as long as he won't kick me off of it. We just gel. I answer this question all the time, and I try to make it not sound like marketing. But no, Tom and I just get each other, and the way he tells stories is the way I want to tell stories, and vice versa. And I'm always excited by a Tom King script. Nothing ever feels like part 2 of 6. It's always something unique and special, and really kind of stretches me in a way that I've never had before. And I think we have a lot more stories to tell.
Did you guys find that you gelled right from the start, like, you know, early on with Sheriff of Babylon?
Yeah, I know Tom always tells a pretty cool story, at least that made me happy, is that they, I guess interviewed is the word you want to use, a couple different artists before me because I was not available at the time. And part of the thing is they wanted to do a sketch of Sophia, the character from Sheriff of Babylon, and his direction was like Sophia holding a teacup. And I apparently was the only artist who ever drew an Iraqi teacup and not an English teacup, which there's a difference. And so I think right at that moment is kind of when he knew, like, oh, this is the guy. This story's so important to me, I want these details, and he actually cared to look it up. Yeah.
So let's take you way back to when you were just a fan, you were just getting started. What were some of the comic books that you read that really caught your eye? And are there any comic book runs that you go back to occasionally and revisit?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a comic fan my whole life. My two brothers. Before I could even read, I remember sneaking into my brother Greg's closet and just like going through every copy of Nexus he had, the Steve Rude and Mike Barron Nexus, and just being completely enamored with it. And it's still a thing I like to revisit every once in a while, just because it was such a weird book, but like done in such a, it was dark but super funny and goofy, but also like really sad at times and romantic, and it's kind of this big epic that I think gets overlooked a lot. But no, then in the 90s I was big into the X-Men, Jim Lee and Claremont, and then even further down the line, it's funny how your tastes evolve as you get older. A lot of the books I read in the 90s by creators are creators that I don't necessarily follow anymore, and a lot of the creators back then that I didn't like are ones I'm obsessed with now. So like, a lot of I had one friend who like read comic books all through school. We were obsessed with the X-Men, the Joe Mad stuff, and Roger Cruz and Brian Hitch on a few issues and stuff. And then just kind of as I got older, it all kind of turned into John Romita Jr. On Spider-Man with Howard Mackie. I just kind of followed the whole trend of comics just like everyone else, and here we are.
So I know you're a big Flash fan.
Yeah.
When are we going to see Mitch and Tom doing a big Flash story?
I would love it. There's so much to do with the Flash that I don't feel anyone has done in comics, and I'm just leaving it in the back of my brain to do, because the way Tom and I play with time with our 9-panel grid is the perfect thing to do with the Flash. And I want to do a Flash book that at no point ever do we get a running pose and lightning coming out, because everybody's done that. I want to do things with passage of time and blurring and all these things that...
No running poses? That's going to be tough.
Poses. It's going to be super tough because editorial won't let it happen. But there's all sorts of weird, cool kind of physics tricks I want to do, and I think it could be really interesting. And Tom would really nail it.
What will the Tom King panel description be for that Flash book?
1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, the whole issue.
Mitch, thanks for talking with us, man.
Thank you so much.
1, 2.